So when I got out of the armoured vehicle, they were all waiting in like different outfits. Some were a little bit sort of like almost naked because they thought I was a man turning up, because in their heads an army photographer is not a woman. They were like, surprise! And I took my helmet off and they were like, oh my God, it's a woman! And ran off screaming. My name is Alison Baskerville. I'm a documentary photographer, come artist, come photojournalist, and most of my work focuses on themes around conflict and also around gender and representation. This image is called Ross and Sharpie. It was taken in a checkpoint in Helmand province in Afghanistan, and it was taken when I was an army photographer around about September 2011. There was this kind of 19-year-old boy, really, who was doing this dangerous job, but also had this sensitivity and was fussing this little dog and looking after it and caring for it and nurturing it. It just automatically was a portrait for me, but it's not a set-up portrait either. I was sat with them and he had just got in from a patrol and he sat down and started fussing the dog. And just as I lifted my camera, they both looked at me at exactly the same moment. That's why I chose this picture, because they both suddenly got eye contact. And what I liked about it is that all of this machinery of war, this weapon, the sort of this bit here, which is the kind of metal detector device for IEDs, kind of seems to disappear really, and we're just really more focused on this facial expression and this sort of moment of kind of softness. This particular photograph was something I'd had in mind for quite a long time, about seeing something alternative from the often warrior-like images of soldiers and this kind of perceived masculine image of strength and almost a showing of the weapon. You know, you get these pictures that are like silhouette shots of a guy standing on a tank. I always found those images really difficult, and when I was an army photographer, I really didn't like photographing like that, because I felt it was this glorification of something that was about war, and it was about people's lives being broken, not just the soldiers but the people in Helmand. So I had such a lot of conflict, personal conflict, from working as an army photographer and trying to establish something of a story without being sucked into making very PR heavy images. This particular photo, again, was taken in Afghanistan. A different time, this was later on in 2011. I was no longer an army photographer at this point, and I returned to Afghanistan as a photojournalist. I shot this photo of a young female army officer, and it was taken on a patrol to deliver some veterinary posters to a local village. I was looking at the female experience of the military. It was a defining moment where I realised I'd spent quite a long time looking at the experiences of being in the military, but always photographing the male experience because they were always the most dominant representation. There was a point where I recognised that whilst you were wearing uniform, the moment you were identified as being female, there was a particular reaction. And these young boys, as soon as they worked out that she was a woman, they found it completely amusing and hilarious. I think on first look, it does look like quite a PR image, like, join the army, it's great. But actually, when you see it with the rest of the images and the caption that comes with it, it isn't about that. It's a photo of her being almost teased and laughed at. And they were never aggressive. Occasionally, we used to get rocks thrown at us. But then I used to get back to the patrol base and think, well, what would I do if I was a young kid and some people that look like they come from outer space carrying guns and walking through my village? I'd probably throw rocks at them as well. And what's amazing is she speaks Pashtun, and you know, she learned for 18 months how to speak the language. So she probably is talking about things with these lads. And because she's able to answer those questions, even in that little conversation that she had with them, she was probably able to dispel a few myths about who she really was. The other layer to this is identity as well, and her identity as a woman there is a perception that they have based on how they see women. And I think this also reminds me that the sort of patriarchal view of women is universal. Technically, the lighting's a bit off. It's especially around this area here. But what I love about it is the motion, particularly this young boy here. There's something about the way he's kind of hoiked his scarf around his head. And I didn't notice until recently that he's carrying a pair of pliers. So I'm not sure what he was off to do. I like images where I can see more than just the foreground. And when I looked at this the other day, I noticed that all the tents of the patrol base are here as well. So you've got this kind of view of where the military are based and, you know, the types of vehicles that use the Hesco bastion that's been built. I think in a lot of the work I was doing, where lots of photographers were sort of making a big effort to prioritise the machinery, the helicopters, the guns, the armoured vehicles, I always wanted to prioritise the people because they've always been more important in my work. So if they're carrying any weapon or there's something military, it always tends to go into the background with me. There's something I really enjoy about doing what might be perceived as a candid image or sort of street photography, but actually still having a relationship with the person in the picture. So it appears that it was very much like taken in a single moment without ever knowing them, but because it's sort of eye level, you do feel like you're actually in this picture. And I like that element of it.